Far beyond mapped space, where star charts ended and warnings replaced names, a small alien research convoy drifted helplessly in the endless black. The ships had once been proud vessels of science and discovery, built to study dead stars and strange anomalies, but now they were nothing more than broken shells floating in silence. Engines were dead. Power reserves were nearly gone. Life support flickered, coughing weak air into dark corridors where exhausted survivors clung to walls and consoles. The void around them felt alive, heavy, watching. Something unseen had been following them for days. It never attacked directly. It waited. It tested their defenses. It let fear do the work. Inside the command ship, alarms no longer screamed because there was no energy left to feed them. Red emergency lights blinked slowly, like a dying heartbeat. The convoy's last remaining officer stood alone on the bridge, staring at a tactical display filled with emptiness. Every escort ship was gone. Some were torn apart. Others vanished without leaving debris. Sensors showed nothing, but instinct screamed danger. This region of space was cursed, whispered about in old legends, a place even pirates avoided. The officer's hands trembled as he checked life signs. So few left. Families. Scientists. Crew who had trusted him to bring them home. He had sent distress calls hours ago through standard channels. No reply came. Not even automated acknowledgements. The galaxy was too far away, too busy, too indifferent. Hope drained with every passing minute. Then the shadows moved again. Not on sensors, but in reality itself. The stars outside the viewport dimmed slightly, as if something massive had passed between them and the light. The officer felt his chest tighten. This was the end. He turned toward a sealed console at the back of the bridge, one most crews never touched. It was ancient, its interface outdated, its warnings written in old galactic scripts. Emergency beacon, Class Omega. Use only when all else is lost. It was not part of the Council's network. It did not guarantee rescue. It did not even promise to be heard. It was a relic from an earlier age, meant to scream into the void without knowing who might answer. Many believed activating it was pointless. Some believed it was dangerous. Legends said the signal reached places no one should call. The officer hesitated only a moment. Fear lost to desperation. He activated the beacon. The ship shook lightly as the system drew power from every remaining reserve. The signal burst outward, weak, fractured, carrying more emotion than data. Fear. Panic. A plea that could barely form words. It echoed into the darkness, bouncing off nothing, fading into regions beyond lore, beyond maps, beyond mercy. Most of the galaxy would never hear it. That was expected. What was not expected was what happened next. Deep in a region marked only by warning symbols and forgotten names, the signal was received. Not by automated systems. Not by trade relays. It was received by something listening. Inside a vast formation of human warships, alarms sounded softly. Not shrill. Not panicked. Just enough to draw attention. The fleet moved in perfect silence, drifting through controlled space where no outsiders were permitted. These were Deathworlders, humans born on planets that tried to kill them every day. High-gravity worlds. Toxic atmospheres. Violent storms. Predators that hunted for sport. Survival was not taught to them. It was required. Inside the flagship, officers turned calmly toward the signal display. No one smiled. No one questioned it. The data was incomplete, distorted, barely intelligible. That did not matter. The meaning was clear. Someone was dying. A senior commander stood from his station, eyes fixed on the flickering beacon signature. His voice was steady when he spoke. Source confirmed. A pause followed, heavy and absolute. Then the order. We move. No cheers followed. No speeches. The fleet shifted as one, massive ships adjusting course in perfect synchronization. Engines powered up with restrained force, not roaring, not glowing brightly, but humming with controlled strength. Space itself seemed to tighten around them as they aligned for transit. The void recoiled, as if aware that something ancient and dangerous had been awakened. Navigation plotted a path no civilian vessel would dare travel. This was not rescue as the galaxy understood it. This was response. Back with the stranded convoy, fear reached a breaking point. Crew members whispered prayers in languages older than their species. Some sat against bulkheads, holding hands, waiting for impact. Others watched the darkness outside, convinced death would come at any second. The unseen hunters circled closer now. The stars flickered again, more violently. Hull plating groaned under pressure that had no visible source. The officer returned to the bridge viewport, staring into the void he had just screamed into. He expected nothing. Silence had been the answer all along. Then a new reading appeared. Faint. Impossible. Multiple mass signatures at extreme range. Too large. Too fast. Sensors struggled to lock onto them, recalibrating again and again as numbers climbed beyond known limits. The officer's breath caught. This was not rescue from the Council. This was not aid from nearby systems. Whatever was coming did not belong to any chart he had ever studied. The hunters felt it too. For the first time since the pursuit began, the pressure eased. The shadows pulled back slightly, as if uncertain. Something had changed the balance. On the human flagship, commanders monitored the same region with calm precision. They saw the Predator's movement patterns. They saw the damaged convoy barely holding together. No anger showed on their faces, but something colder settled in their eyes. Memory. Humanity remembered what it was like to send distress calls that went unanswered. They remembered drifting colonies, silent pleas, worlds that died slowly while the galaxy debated protocols. The fleet accelerated. Space warped around them as they crossed impossible distance in controlled jumps. No warnings were sent. No threats issued. The Deathworlders did not announce themselves. They did not need to. As the human fleet closed in, the alien convoy's failing systems registered a surge of energy sweeping across the region. Not hostile. Stabilizing. Life support flickered, then strengthened. Emergency lights brightened. Power returned just enough to keep people alive. Confusion replaced despair. Crew members looked at each other, afraid to believe it. The officer stared at his console as a new signal appeared, clean and unmistakable. A transmission request. Origin unknown. Language perfectly translated. He hesitated, then accepted. A calm human voice filled the bridge. Hold position. Do not attempt evasive maneuvers. There was no threat in the tone. No demand. Just certainty. Tears filled the officer's eyes as his knees nearly gave out. Someone had heard them. Outside the viewport, the darkness began to change. Shapes emerged, vast and controlled, sliding into view without violence. Human warships arrived like moving mountains, their hulls dark, their presence overwhelming. The hunters recoiled fully now, retreating into the shadows they had once owned. Fear changed sides. The alien convoy was no longer alone. And deep within the human fleet, as they took formation around the damaged ships, a single truth guided every action. The call had been heard. And when Deathworlders answer a call, the void itself learns to listen. The moment the human fleet arrived, the balance of fear in the void shifted, slow at first, then all at once, like a breath finally released after being held too long. Inside the damaged alien convoy, no one celebrated. No one cheered. Relief came mixed with terror, because whatever had answered their ancient SOS was not gentle, and it was not small. The human warships surrounded the convoy in a silent protective arc, positioning themselves with precise spacing, their movements calm and deliberate, as if the darkness itself obeyed them. Power flowed outward from the fleet, stabilizing failing systems, sealing hull breaches, restoring gravity just enough for crews to stand again. Survivors collapsed to their knees, some crying openly, others staring at the massive shapes outside the viewports, unable to process that they were still alive. The human voice returned over open channels, clear and controlled, asking simple questions about casualties, system damage, and the nature of the threat. There was no panic in the tone, no rush, only focus. That focus carried weight, the kind that came from beings who had faced death so often that fear no longer distracted them. But the hunters had not fled completely. They watched from the edges of space, ancient predators born in the dark between stars, drawn to weakness like instinct itself. For centuries, they had fed on lost ships and isolated worlds, striking silently, leaving nothing behind but broken debris and unanswered questions. No one fought them directly. No one survived long enough to learn their patterns. Until now. As the human fleet secured the convoy, the predators shifted, adapting, testing the newcomers with probing attacks that bent space and swallowed light. Sensors flared as unknown forces pressed against human shields. Inside the fleet, no alarms blared wildly. Instead, systems adjusted smoothly, compensating in real time. Human officers studied the attacks without surprise, logging data, identifying weaknesses, learning. The predators struck harder, confused by resistance, lashing out with weapons that collapsed gravity and twisted matter. Human ships absorbed the impacts, hulls scorched but intact, formations holding. The convoy survivors watched in stunned silence as the impossible happened. The monsters that had hunted them for days were being held back, not by luck, not by sacrifice, but by control. One predator attempted to slip past the human screen, aiming for the weakest alien vessel, sensing fear the way sharks sense blood. A human frigate moved instantly, not firing wildly, but placing itself directly in the predator's path. A single controlled burst followed, not explosive, but precise, disrupting the creature's structure, forcing it to retreat howling into folded space. The sound carried through sensors like a scream torn apart by static. It was the first time any species had ever heard a hunter cry out in pain. Across the human fleet, the reaction was the same everywhere. None. No cheers. No satisfaction. The commanders simply adjusted formation and advanced one step forward. That step sent a message clearer than any broadcast. This space was no longer free hunting ground. Inside the alien convoy, fear transformed into something unfamiliar. Hope. Not fragile hope, but heavy hope, the kind that changes how a species remembers a moment forever. The last surviving officer stood on the bridge, hands shaking, watching human ships move with disciplined grace. He realized something terrifying and comforting at the same time. These Deathworlders were not here by accident. They had not arrived in panic. They had come prepared for this exact situation. The human commander finally requested a full data transfer on the predators. As the convoy transmitted what little it knew, fragments of old myths and half-forgotten warnings surfaced. Even the humans went quiet for a moment as they reviewed the information. Not fear. Recognition. Humanity had encountered things like this before, long ago, in places no records officially acknowledged. The commander spoke again, his voice low but steady. "These things don't stop hunting," he said. "So we stop them." There was no drama in the words. No promise of glory. Just intent. The human fleet began to move forward, away from the convoy and toward the shadows where the predators waited. It was not a charge. It was an advance. The difference mattered. As the Deathworlders pushed deeper into the dark, the predators reacted with sudden aggression, launching a full assault meant to overwhelm through terror and confusion. Space screamed as reality bent under their weapons. Human ships were struck, damaged, some pushed out of formation. Still, the line held. Human crews fought in conditions that would have crushed others, enduring pressure, radiation, and gravity shifts without breaking rhythm. This was the environment they were born from. Hell did not scare them. It trained them. The predators began to retreat again, but this time there was panic in their movement. They were being studied, countered, pushed back by prey that refused to die. The human commander issued a single order that carried across the fleet. Contain. Do not pursue yet. That restraint confused both the predators and the watching aliens. Why stop now? Why not finish them? But the humans knew something the galaxy did not. Rescue was never the end of the mission. Understanding was. As the fleet held position, locking the predators out of the immediate area, the alien convoy was escorted safely behind human lines. Medical drones moved among the damaged ships. Human personnel boarded, not as conquerors, but as stabilizers, helping where they could, saying little, judging nothing. For the first time since the nightmare began, the survivors slept without screaming. And in the darkness beyond, the ancient hunters watched the Deathworlders with growing dread, realizing too late that they had answered a call they should never have heard. The human fleet did not rush forward, and that decision terrified everyone watching, because it showed confidence deeper than aggression. After containing the predators and securing the alien convoy, the Deathworlders held their line in the void, engines humming softly, weapons charged but silent. The darkness ahead felt thicker now, heavier, as if space itself understood it was being challenged. Inside the human command ships, no one spoke loudly. Officers reviewed data streams, attack patterns, and distorted sensor echoes left behind by the retreating hunters. Every movement the predators made was recorded, analyzed, and compared to fragments of ancient encounters buried deep in human archives. This was not humanity's first meeting with things that lived between stars. Long ago, before humans were welcomed or mocked by the galaxy, they had learned a hard truth in forgotten places: some enemies cannot be scared away, only ended. The human commander watched the data scroll past his eyes, his face calm but tight with memory. He remembered reports from lost expeditions, classified failures, ships that never returned, and distress calls that had sounded very much like the one they had just answered. The galaxy had ignored those warnings too. Now the cost was coming due. He issued a quiet order. The fleet advanced. As the Deathworlders moved deeper into the uncharted region, space began to change. Stars dimmed unnaturally. Navigation systems reported shifting distances that made no sense. Gravity pulled sideways, then vanished, then returned heavier than before. Alien survivors watching from behind human lines felt nausea and fear just observing it. For humans, it was familiar. Deathworlds taught adaptation or death. Ships adjusted automatically. Crews compensated without panic. This was an environment built to kill the unprepared, and the predators had relied on that fact for centuries. They struck again, harder this time, emerging from folded space in coordinated packs, no longer cautious, driven by hunger and anger. Reality tore as their weapons fired, waves of distorted force smashing into the human advance. Several ships took direct hits. Hulls cracked. Systems failed. Emergency lights flashed. Still, no one broke formation. Human vessels responded not with chaos, but with layered precision. Countermeasures activated. Fields adjusted. Weapons fired in short, controlled bursts designed not to destroy blindly, but to expose structure. One predator was caught mid-transition, its form destabilized, trapped half in real space, half in whatever nightmare dimension it called home. The creature thrashed, its presence warping sensors and minds alike. Human ships closed in, surrounding it carefully, like surgeons around a wound. A focus strike followed, collapsing its core and forcing it to dissolve into harmless energy. Silence followed. Across the fleet, human crews exhaled slowly. They had proven something important. The hunters could bleed. That realization sent shockwaves through the predator packs. They pulled back again, but this time not to regroup calmly. This time they scattered. Fear had entered their instincts. Inside the alien convoy, officers watched the battle unfold with disbelief and awe. Species that had spent generations running from these monsters were now seeing them pushed back, studied, dismantled. One survivor whispered that the humans were not fighting like warriors, but like inevitability. The human commander did not celebrate the small victory. He knew predators like these learned quickly. He ordered deeper scans, wider coverage, mapping the region they were entering. What they found chilled even human veterans. Vast structures hidden in folded space. Nesting grounds. Feeding corridors marked by the absence of stars. This was not a random hunting ground. It was a lair. The predators had been safe here for a very long time. The commander's voice carried across the fleet, steady but heavy. "This ends here," he said. "No more running." The Deathworlders pushed forward again, this time with purpose sharpened into resolve. The predators responded with desperation, throwing everything they had into one massive counterattack. Space screamed as multiple realities overlapped. Human ships were battered, some forced out of position, alarms finally sounding as damage crossed critical thresholds. Crews were injured. Some ships went dark for terrifying seconds. But the line did not break. Humans fought through conditions that would have crushed other species' minds, holding formation through sheer discipline and stubborn will. This was what their worlds had trained them for. Pain was familiar. Fear was manageable. Giving up was not an option. At the heart of the Predator's territory, the human fleet struck something important. A central node. A control mass. The Predators reacted instantly, converging in panic, trying to defend it. That told the humans everything they needed to know. Concentrated fire followed, not wild, not emotional, but exact. The node collapsed, sending a ripple through folded space. Predator movements faltered. Coordination broke. Packs collided, scattered, fled. The darkness itself seemed to loosen its grip. When the fighting paused, the region felt quieter, emptier, as if something ancient had been wounded badly. The human fleet held position, damaged but unbroken. Medical teams moved quickly. Repairs began immediately. No one spoke of victory. Everyone understood this was only the beginning. But one truth had become undeniable. The hunters were no longer the masters of the dark. And far behind the human lines, as the alien survivors watched the Deathworlders stand their ground in a place no one else dared enter, a new story began forming across the galaxy. Not a story of monsters. Not a story of saviors. But a story of a species that heard a cry in the void and walked straight into hell to make sure no one else ever had to face it alone again. After the collapse of the Predator's core node, the void did not return to peace, it only grew quieter in a way that felt wrong, like a wounded beast holding its breath. The human fleet remained in position, damaged hulls glowing faintly as repair drones swarmed across them, sealing breaches and restoring systems while crews worked without rest. There was exhaustion in every movement, but no hesitation. Humans knew better than to trust sudden silence. Deep within the Predator territory, distorted signals still pulsed, weak but alive, like a dying heartbeat refusing to stop. The alien survivors watched from behind the human defensive line, fear twisting inside them again. They had seen hope rise, but they also knew how cruel this region of space could be. Many believed the Predators would return stronger, angrier, more desperate than before. Inside the human command ship, the atmosphere was heavy, filled with quiet determination. The commander studied layered sensor maps showing fragmented Predator activity spreading outward in chaos. What the humans had struck was not just a structure, but a nerve center, something that connected the hunters across distances no one else could reach. Now that connection was damaged, but not destroyed. That mattered. The commander knew the truth the galaxy often refused to accept. Leaving a threat wounded but alive only ensured it would adapt. He issued a new order, one that carried weight across every deck and corridor. "We establish the line here," he said. "Nothing gets past us. Not now. Not ever." The human fleet repositioned, forming a massive barrier between the Predator depths and the safer regions of space beyond. This was not a retreat. It was a stand. As the Deathworlders locked their formation, the Predators reacted with sudden fury. From the darkness, fragmented packs began launching reckless attacks, no longer hunting with patience, but driven by instinct and pain. They hurled themselves at the human line, tearing at shields, warping space, screaming through sensors in ways that rattled even hardened crews. Several human ships took heavy damage, systems failing under pressure that felt like reality itself was trying to crush them. On one vessel, gravity inverted violently, slamming crew into ceilings before stabilizing again. Injured sailors dragged themselves back to stations without complaint. Another ship lost engines completely, drifting helplessly toward the Predators. Before fear could take hold, two human cruisers moved instantly, placing themselves between the drifting ship and the attackers, absorbing the blows meant to finish it. That moment was seen by the alien survivors watching from safety, and something inside them broke. These Deathworlders were not fighting for glory or dominance. They were protecting strangers as if it was instinct. The Predators did not understand this behavior. Their attacks grew more erratic, more desperate. They tried new tactics, flooding space with distorted fields meant to overwhelm minds rather than hulls. Alien observers collapsed in pain as the effects reached them even at a distance. Human crews felt it too, pressure pushing against their thoughts, memories surfacing uninvited, fear clawing at old wounds. But Deathworlders had been forged under constant stress. Training kicked in. Med teams moved quickly. Neural dampeners activated. Crews held their positions through sheer discipline and shared will. Humanity did not break. Slowly, painfully, the Predators exhausted themselves against the human line. Each failed assault taught the humans more. Each retreat revealed weaknesses. The fleet adapted, adjusting frequencies, weapon outputs, formation spacing. What had once been unknown horror became a problem to solve. Hours stretched into what felt like days. No one slept. No one left their post. Finally, the Predators pulled back again, retreating deeper than before, leaving behind a void littered with unstable distortions and fading echoes of their presence. The human commander allowed himself a single breath of relief, then spoke again. "This region is no longer abandoned," he said. "Mark it." Navigation systems updated instantly. Where once there were only warning symbols and blank space, a new designation appeared across human charts. Protected zone. No predators. No exploitation. No silence. The meaning was clear. Humanity was not just rescuing one convoy. Humanity was claiming responsibility for a wound in the galaxy no one else had dared to heal. Behind the line, human personnel boarded the alien ships again, providing supplies, medical care, and quiet reassurance. No speeches were given. No promises made. Actions were enough. Survivors wept openly now, not from fear, but from the overwhelming realization that someone had chosen to stand with them when the rest of the galaxy would have turned away. As the fleet held its position, battered but unyielding, word of what was happening began to spread through intercepted channels and fragmented transmissions. Other species listened in disbelief as reports described Deathworlders holding the dark at bay, refusing to retreat, refusing to abandon those who had cried out. Somewhere far away, in council chambers and secure offices, leaders began to understand the mistake they had made by labeling humans as dangerous and distant. Danger was exactly what the galaxy needed on its side. And in the void, under a sky that no longer belonged to monsters alone, humanity proved something that would echo for generations. When a line is drawn by Deathworlders, it is not drawn in fear. It is drawn in resolve, and nothing that crosses it leaves unchanged. The line held, but holding it came with a price that weighed heavily on every human ship and every soul aboard them. Hours turned into cycles, cycles into something blurred and exhausting, as the Deathworlder fleet remained stationed at the edge of the Predator's territory, refusing to move, refusing to blink. Repairs continued without pause, but damage ran deeper than scorched hulls and shattered systems. Crews were injured, some badly, bodies strained by forces no living being was meant to endure. Med bays overflowed, not with screams, but with quiet determination as doctors and medics worked with practiced efficiency, saving who they could, stabilizing the rest, asking for nothing but time. No one complained. No one asked to leave. Every human on that line understood why they were there. They remembered too well what it felt like to be alone in the dark. Across the fleet, names of the wounded were logged, then quietly transmitted to command. Some ships reported losses, small numbers compared to the scale of the galaxy, but each name hit like a weight. These were not soldiers chasing glory. These were people who had chosen to answer a call that was not meant for them, a call the rest of the galaxy had ignored. The human commander walked through his ship's corridors, passing crews resting against bulkheads, eyes hollow but focused, hands shaking from exhaustion yet ready to move at a moment's notice. He stopped by the viewport, staring into the darkness where the predators had retreated. He knew this silence was temporary. Creatures like that did not accept loss quietly. They would adapt, regroup, and return with something worse. Humanity could not afford to leave now. Behind the line, the alien survivors began to truly understand what rescue meant when it came from Deathworlders. Human teams continued to assist them, sharing supplies, repairing ships, even sitting quietly with those who could not stop shaking. There were no lectures, no demands for gratitude. One alien scientist, his voice breaking, asked a human engineer why they had come so far, why they risked so much for strangers. The human paused, then answered simply, "Because once, no one came for us." The word spread quickly among the survivors, sinking deep. It was not hatred that drove humanity forward. It was memory. Meanwhile, the predators stirred again. Sensors picked up distant fluctuations, coordinated movements deeper in the dark. They were not attacking yet. They were learning. Human analysts saw patterns forming, strategies evolving. The enemy was preparing something desperate. The commander gathered his senior officers and spoke plainly. "If we pull back, they spread," he said. "If we stay, we bleed." No one argued. The choice had already been made the moment they answered the SOS. Orders went out to reinforce the line, to rotate crews where possible, to prepare for escalation. Far away, fragments of information leaked into wider galactic networks. Traders, scouts, and listening posts began to hear pieces of the story. Deathworlders holding a forbidden region. Predators being pushed back. A rescue that turned into a stand. Reactions were mixed. Some species were terrified, believing humanity had provoked something that would consume them all. Others felt something closer to hope, a dangerous thing in a galaxy used to looking away. Councils debated intervention, then hesitated, then did nothing. Humanity noticed, but did not comment. They had seen this before. As time passed, the strain showed. Human ships operated at the edge of safety. Crews slept in short shifts, dreams filled with pressure and darkness. Still, morale did not break. It hardened. Every failed predator probe, every aborted assault, reinforced the same truth. The line worked. Humanity was holding back a nightmare the galaxy had never faced directly. When the predators finally launched their next attack, it was not wild or reckless. It was calculated, focused on one section of the human formation, a brutal test of resolve. The Deathworlders met it head-on, adjusting, absorbing losses, countering with precision. The battle was short, violent, and exhausting. When it ended, the line still stood. The predators withdrew again, leaving behind broken space and a silence filled with warning. Inside the human fleet, exhaustion mixed with grim pride. They were paying the cost, and they knew it would continue. But none of them doubted the reason. Somewhere behind them, alien ships full of terrified civilians were alive because humanity had stayed. Somewhere ahead of them, monsters were learning that this galaxy was no longer free to hunt the helpless. As the human commander looked out into the dark once more, he understood the full weight of what they had chosen. Answering the call had not made humanity heroes. It had made them guardians. And guardians do not leave when the price becomes painful. They stay, because leaving would cost far more than they are willing to pay. The next attack did not begin with violence, and that was how humanity knew it would be the worst one yet, because silence, when used by predators, is never empty, it is calculated. The void ahead of the human line grew unnaturally still, not even the faint distortions that had become familiar remained. Sensors showed nothing, long-range scans returned clean space, and for a brief, dangerous moment, some of the alien survivors behind the line dared to hope it was over. The Deathworlders did not share that hope. Human crews felt it in their bones, in the way the stars seemed too steady, in the way pressure built inside helmets and cockpits without any physical cause. This was the calm before something desperate and final. The human commander did not raise his voice when he spoke, but every ship heard him clearly. All units, full readiness. This is it. The predators struck everywhere at once. Space tore open across multiple vectors as reality folded violently, predators emerging inside sensor-blind spots, behind formation edges, even above and below in impossible angles. Their weapons were different now, sharper, more focused, aimed not at ships but at minds. Waves of psychic pressure slammed into the fleet, dragging up fear, memories, doubt, grief, anything that could weaken resolve. Alien observers screamed as the pressure hit them, some losing consciousness instantly. Human crews staggered, hands trembling, breath catching as the darkness clawed at old wounds. Faces of lost friends appeared in their thoughts. Voices of people they could not save whispered failure. For a heartbeat, the line wavered. Then training took over. Deathworlders had been forged in environments where pain was constant and survival required control over fear. Neural shields activated. Command protocols cut emotional feedback. Crew members grounded each other with short, sharp words and physical contact, reminding themselves where they were and why. Ships took massive hits as predators hurled concentrated force meant to crush hulls and sanity together. One human destroyer lost power completely, drifting as predators closed in. The bridge crew prepared for death without panic. Then a human battleship shifted position, placing itself directly in front of the disabled vessel, absorbing impact after impact, hull plating peeling away under pressure that bent space like metal. The battleship's captain did not ask permission. He did not hesitate. He knew the rule. No one gets left behind. Across the fleet, similar acts repeated. Ships shielded ships. Crews fought fires, rerouted systems, sealed compartments, sometimes trapping themselves to save others. Human med bays filled again, not with cries, but with quiet determination as injured sailors refused sedation until their stations were covered. The predators pressed harder, sensing resistance, pouring everything they had into breaking the line. Then humanity did something the predators did not expect. The Deathworlders advanced. Not a retreat. Not a hold. A push. Human ships surged forward into the heart of the attack, closing distance where Predator weapons lost effectiveness. Precision fire targeted anchor points in folded space, places Predators relied on to appear and disappear. One by one, those anchors collapsed. Predators screamed through distorted channels as their movement options vanished. They were being trapped in real space, forced to fight on terms they had never faced. Fear spread through the hunters. Their coordination fractured. Attacks became chaotic. Some tried to flee and failed. Others charged blindly and were dismantled with brutal efficiency. The human commander watched the battle unfold, jaw tight, eyes burning not with rage, but with focus sharpened by years of loss. He gave the final order. End their reach. Human weapons fired in coordinated patterns, not designed to wipe out every predator, but to collapse the space they depended on, sealing rifts, burning corridors, turning their hunting ground into a prison. The void screamed as physics reasserted itself violently. When the last wave ended, the predators were broken, scattered remnants fleeing into regions that no longer connected to the galaxy they once haunted. Silence returned, but this time it was different. It was empty. The human fleet held position, battered, scarred, many ships barely holding together. Slowly, crews realized the truth. The predators were not coming back. Not here. Not like this. Behind the line, alien survivors wept openly, some falling to their knees, others staring in disbelief at sensor displays that finally showed nothing hunting them. Human crews slumped into seats, exhaustion crashing over them now that the fight was done. Some laughed quietly. Some cried. Some simply stared into the dark, remembering those who would never see this moment. The human commander removed his helmet and closed his eyes for a long second. The cost had been heavy. Too heavy. But the line had not broken. The galaxy had not lost another system to the dark. And somewhere deep in the void, the ancient predators carried something new back into the shadows with them. Fear. Because for the first time in their long, merciless existence, the darkness had learned a terrible lesson. Deathworlders do not run from the dark. They walk into it, endure it, and make sure it never hunts the helpless again. When the fighting finally ended, it did not feel like victory. It felt like survival stretched to its limit, a moment where the universe itself seemed unsure whether to breathe again. The human fleet remained where it was, engines idling, weapons powered down but ready, hulls scarred and glowing faintly from emergency repairs. Silence filled the region, deep and absolute, not the false quiet of predators hiding, but the real emptiness left behind when a threat is truly gone. Human crews moved slowly now, exhaustion pressing down on them harder than any enemy attack had. Some sat against bulkheads, helmets removed, hands shaking as adrenaline faded. Others helped carry wounded comrades to med bays, refusing to let automated systems do the work alone. Names were spoken softly, sometimes with relief, sometimes with grief. Not everyone had survived. That truth settled heavy across the fleet. Behind the human line, the alien survivors watched in disbelief as sensor screens stayed clear. No shadows. No distortions. No signs of pursuit. For the first time since entering this cursed region of space, they felt truly safe. The realization hit them all at once, and many broke down, crying openly, clinging to one another, overwhelmed by the sudden absence of fear that had defined their final days. Human crews boarded the alien ships again, bringing medical supplies, food, and quiet reassurance. There were no speeches, no dramatic gestures. A human medic sat beside a shaking alien child, adjusting a blanket, saying nothing at all. That simple act carried more meaning than any victory broadcast could. The human commander finally ordered a system-wide transmission, not just to the convoy, but outward, across open space where listening posts, scouts, and curious ships might hear it. The message was short, calm, and carried no threat. The threat has been contained. This region is secure. Distress calls in this sector will be answered. That was all. But those words traveled far. Farther than weapons ever could. Across the galaxy, fragments of the message were intercepted and replayed. At first, disbelief followed. Then confusion. Then fear mixed with awe. Reports spread of Deathworlders walking into forbidden space, holding the line, and pushing ancient predators back where no one else ever had. Old myths were dragged out of archives and re-examined. Species that had once labeled humans as dangerous isolationists began to see a different truth. Humanity did not come when it was convenient. Humanity came when it was necessary. In council chambers light years away, leaders argued again, but this time their voices were quieter. Some demanded explanations. Some warned that humans were becoming too powerful. Others asked a question none of them liked the answer to. What if we had been the ones drifting in the dark? Would anyone have come for us? Back at the edge of the reclaimed region, the human fleet began slow withdrawals, not abandoning the area, but repositioning, establishing permanent watch stations and automated defenses to ensure the predators could never return. This was not conquest. This was responsibility. Human engineers worked alongside alien technicians, helping stabilize ships enough to escort them safely home. When the last alien vessel was ready to leave, the convoy's surviving officer approached the human commander via secure channel. His voice shook as he spoke words that carried the weight of everything they had endured. "We will remember this," he said. The human commander nodded once. "So will we." No promises were made. None were needed. As the alien convoy finally jumped to safety, carrying stories that would spread faster than fear ever had, the human fleet remained behind, watching the darkness they had changed forever. Crews held small, quiet moments of remembrance for those lost, human and alien alike. No flags were raised. No victories declared. The cost was too real for celebration. Yet something profound had shifted. The galaxy now knew that distress signals did not always vanish into nothing. Somewhere, someone was listening. And that knowledge began to change behavior across the stars. Trade routes were adjusted. Patrols became more cautious. Calls for help were taken seriously, not because of rules, but because of the story of the Deathworlders who answered when no one else did. Inside the human fleet, as ships slowly turned toward home, a shared understanding settled among the crews. They had not just saved a convoy. They had sent an echo through the galaxy, one that would outlast them. An echo that said the void does not belong only to monsters, that silence does not always mean no one is coming, and that when humanity hears a cry in the dark, it does not ask who you are, what you offer, or whether helping is safe. It comes anyway. And long after the scars on their ships were repaired, long after the wounds healed and the names of the fallen were carved into quiet memorials, that echo would remain, reshaping the galaxy one choice at a time, reminding every species of a new, unbreakable truth. The Deathworlders are listening. Time moved forward, but the echo of that answered SOS never truly faded. It settled into the galaxy like a law no one had voted on yet everyone obeyed. The region once marked with warning symbols and blank space was no longer feared in the same way. It was renamed in quiet star charts and whispered routes as the Sentinel Reach, a place where the darkness had been confronted and forced back, not erased, but understood. Human watch stations drifted there now, silent and patient, their presence constant but never aggressive. No banners flew. No warnings were broadcast. The message was in the restraint itself. Humanity did not need to shout to be heard. Across the galaxy, the story spread slowly at first, then faster as traders, explorers, and rescued crews carried it with them from system to system. They spoke of Deathworlders who did not ask for allegiance or payment, who did not arrive with speeches or demands, but with calm focus and unyielding resolve. They spoke of a fleet that bled to hold a line no one else would, of predators that learned fear for the first time, and of a call that should have vanished into nothing but instead reshaped everything. In academies and training halls, the incident became a case study not in military dominance, but in responsibility. Young officers of many species learned that ignoring distress signals carried consequences, not because humans would punish them, but because one day they might be the ones calling into the dark. Councils quietly updated protocols. Trade guilds funded fast response networks. Patrols began to treat unknown regions with caution rather than arrogance. Humanity never demanded these changes. The galaxy made them on its own. On Earth and its allied worlds, there were no grand celebrations. The fleet returned scarred, quieter than when it had left. Ships entered docks for long repairs. Crews reunited with families who held them longer than words could express. Names of the fallen were spoken softly, recorded carefully, remembered without ceremony. Humanity did not see itself as heroic. It saw itself as consistent. This was what it meant to be Deathworlders. Survive, adapt, protect when others cannot. Somewhere beyond the settled lanes, new SOS beacons were installed on ships that once would never have carried them. Captains who would have chosen silence now chose to call anyway, believing that even if no one else listened, the Deathworlders might. And sometimes, far out in the void, a faint signal would be picked up by human senses, distorted and afraid, echoing the same desperation as that first call. Each time, the response was the same. Source confirmed. We move. Years later, long after the immediate fear had passed, a human commander stood alone at a viewport overlooking the stars. The scars of that battle still lived in his dreams, but they did not haunt him the way silence once had. He knew the galaxy was not suddenly kind or safe. Darkness still existed. Monsters still hid between stars. But something fundamental had changed. The galaxy now knew it was being watched by a species that remembered what it felt like to be alone. And that knowledge mattered. The commander turned away from the stars as a soft alert sounded, another faint signal brushing the edge of human space. He did not hesitate. None of them ever did. Because the call never truly fades, and neither does the promise humanity made the first time it answered one. No one who cries into the void should be ignored again. And as long as the Deathworlders exist, the darkness will never be completely unanswered.